to Inspired Design Notes. Our first project is going to be potting an orchid in its most simple form. What we're going to do is create a design that looks as if it's a natural growing orchid. Typically, they're potted in bark or maybe a little bit of moss, and there isn't anything more than just the plant growing in it. So to create that, you want to start out with whatever your container is going to be, and I'm using a painted mossy pot today. It's terracotta with a paint finish on it that gives it kind of that mossy texture. And then we're going to use the dry foam for flowers. Be sure and pick out dry foam base rather than fresh foam because it's not dense enough to hold your materials well. So you have to take and cut this to fit the pot that you're using. So you're going to cut a square that pretty much goes corner to corner in the container. This is going to be tall enough at this depth because you want it to sit down into the container a little bit because it needs to look like it's planted. You can just turn this over this way to see where your corners fit and kind of do a measure, and that'll tell you where to cut it off. And then we need to shape it to fit this side, so we'll take this one off. And then because of the taper of the pot, we're going to need to taper the sides down so it wedges inside. So let's just take these off like so. And see how it fits. And it's getting close to working in there. It's better to take it off a little bit at a time than to shear it off too much because then it won't wedge in and it won't be stable. So we can take a little bit off like so. And now see how that fits in there. And it's starting to wedge into the container nicely. You can simply wedge it in the pot if you want to. It stays pretty tight, but it isn't going to be stable enough to actually stay in there if you were to pick it up by the foam. If you want it to be very permanent, you'll want to use either pan glue or your glue gun glue and adhere that to the foam and then set it down in the pot. And now this is ready to go. I like to wedge these corners off right here just to give it the foam a little bit of a rounded dome so that the moss kind of covers it in more of a rounded shape. You can tuck it in that way. And then again, we're using the sheet moss and you can see that stiff backing on there. We want to open that up a little bit so we can actually get some stems through. And then looking at how it fits on the top, we'll just take off a little bit more. And then we can simply take and put those edges down inside so it's nice and clean and cover that up. This piece of moss has a bit of attitude. Doesn't want to stay in there very well. If you have problems with that, take your little fern pins and then you can just simply pin your moss on, and using the green enameled wire for your fern pins, it blends nicely into the moss, and now we have control instead of the moss having control. This is pretty much ready to go. We have our beautiful little slipper orchid that we styled in our section on styling. If the stem's too long on them, of course you can cut it off. This one's probably going to fit all right the way it is, but we'll just shear it down a little bit. And then it'll go into the center of the pot like so. And styling those leaves just a little bit. The roots coming over. That's ready to go. If you want to make sure it's good and stable, take it back out, put a little bit of glue on it, and put it back into your foam. And that's ready to go. Beautiful little potted slipper orchid. And here's another one that you can see, a little maybe Phalaenopsis orchid. Again, just the sphagnum moss on top of the mossy pot. And in its very simple form, two beautiful little growing plants. Thank you for joining us.